By the 1760s, Boston had become one of the most important cities in British North America, a crowded port shaped by trade, power, and rising tension. Within a single generation, this city would be pushed through revolution, scarred by conflict, and rebuilt as part of a new nation. In this video, I'm using modern AI tools to bring historic paintings, maps, and engravings to life, shifting perspective, changing camera angles, and moving through these scenes in ways their original artists never could. The goal isn't just to look at the past, but to step into it, to move through Boston as it once was, and imagine what it may have felt like to stand here, from settlement to revolution. And if you stay until the end, we'll compare these same locations to how they look today, to see what time has changed and what still remains. Before we set foot in 18th century Boston, it helps to understand how this story began. This painting shows the arrival of the Winthrop Fleet in 1630. Led by John Winthrop, these ships carried settlers into Massachusetts Bay, laying the groundwork for what would soon become Boston. Imagine stepping ashore on an unfamiliar coastline, not knowing what lay ahead, only that everything you hoped to build would begin right here. Just a few years later, Boston's first meeting house was built in 1632. The engraving was created much later, but it likely reflects how the building originally appeared: simple, functional, and central to everyday life. It stood near what is now State Street, close to the heart of modern downtown Boston, showing how closely the city's earliest foundations still align with its present layout. Scenes like this help us pause for a moment. A Boston that was still quiet, uncertain, and only beginning to take shape. Modest wooden buildings lined muddy roads, ships anchored close to shore, and daily life unfolded at a slower, more fragile pace. At this point, Boston was less a city and more an experiment, still finding its footing in a new world. Looking back now, it's easy to see this as one of the earliest roots of what would later be called the American dream. This early 1720s engraving shows Boston as seen from the harbor, already recognizable in key ways. In the foreground, Boston Harbor is crowded with ships that powered the city's Atlantic economy. No longer a fragile settlement, Boston had become a growing port town, whose streets, harbor, and skyline still shape the city today. To better show Long Wharf, I've included this 1743 engraving. Here, it extends prominently into the harbor, projecting farther into the water than surrounding docks, and serving as one of Boston's primary gateways to the Atlantic world. Ships from Europe and the Caribbean arrived here, cargo was unloaded, and passengers stepped ashore. For many, this was their first impression of Boston, a defining waterfront landmark whose outline can still be traced and visited today. Rising behind it are church steeples, marking the town's neighborhoods, including Christ Church in the North End, later known as the Old North Church, which still stands today. Together, these landmarks show Boston on the threshold of transformation. If you're enjoying this journey through early Boston, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. It really helps support these deep dive history projects. This image shows Boston Light, completed in 1716 on Little Brewster Island, the first lighthouse built in what would become the United States. For arriving ships, it was often the first sign of land after a long Atlantic crossing. During the Revolutionary War, the original structure was deliberately destroyed by British forces in 1776, but it was rebuilt in 1783 and still stands on the same site today, continuing to guide ships into the harbor more than 3 centuries later. This engraving shows Castle William, the main fort guarding Boston Harbor in the early 18th century. Positioned on Castle Island, it controlled the narrow approach to the town and symbolized British military authority. Its guns reminded arriving ships that Boston was not just a port of opportunity, but a city watched and defended by imperial power. Leaving the harbor, we crossed the river into Cambridge. At this time, Harvard College was a small but important center of learning, founded to train clergy and civic leaders for the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Of the early buildings shown here, only Massachusetts Hall, completed in 1720, still stands today. It's strange to think how ordinary this place must have felt at the time, without any sense of what it would one day become. Back in Boston, the old State House stood at the center of colonial life. Laws were debated here, taxes imposed, and royal authority enforced. Proclamations were read aloud to crowds gathered below. Today, it still stands, quietly surrounded by modern skyscrapers, a rare survivor from this era. This scene shows Boston Common in the late 1760s. At the time, it was used for grazing animals, public gatherings, and military drills. British soldiers trained here, often within sight of townspeople going about their daily lives, a constant reminder of imperial presence. If you want more immersive history like this, make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications. More cities and stories are coming. In December 1773, colonists boarded ships in Boston Harbor and dumped chests of tea into the water in protest of British taxation. It wasn't called the Boston Tea Party at the time. It wasn't meant to be a spectacle, just a message. Places like the Green Dragon Tavern became centers of resistance, where merchants, dock workers, and political organizers debated and planned. And by 1775, Faneuil Hall had become a pressure point where public frustration turned into action. In 1789, these same streets welcomed George Washington as president of a new nation. Temporary arches were built, and the city celebrated what had once seemed impossible. And standing through it all was Christ Church, the Old North Church. Built in 1723, it was once just another neighborhood church, until one night when two lanterns were hung from its tower, signaling that British troops were moving by sea. Now, when we look at Boston today, many of these places still remain, some unchanged, some buried beneath modern life. History didn't disappear here. It stayed, layered beneath the city we see now. Thanks for watching. Your ideas and feedback truly shape what comes next.